If you got me talking about fighting games, there was one game I would always mention to you, Skullgirls, a little indie fighting game by Lab Zero Games that quickly became one of my faves ever since its original version, and I've been a follower ever since, from the early days of Squiggly to the limited run of PS4, to the release on Switch. I love it to death, and I still think it's the best Western-made fighting game out there, I'm dead serious. But I was starting to wonder, what were they gonna do after Skullgirls was done? Well, we find out with one Kickstarter for a little game called Indivisible, a sort of Metroidvania platformer RPG beat-em-up was their next project. And honestly, I didn't even really care what the genre was. Because of how good Skullgirls was, I was already interested. And having a demo to play during the Kickstarter definitely helped. So now that the game is out after a long time waiting, the final result? Let's find out. Indivisible starts with a young girl named Ajna training with her father in her village. When she comes back, the village is under attack by a man named Dar, who also kills her father. Enraged, she battles him, but then he's magically stored inside her brain and can be summoned at any time. Reluctantly, the two work with each other, Ajna wanting to find his superior and make him pay, and Dar wanting to hand her in. Along the way, they meet many colorful characters that join her headspace, but at some point things take a change. Ajna awakens to a dark power inside herself, which could also call upon their god and wipe the world clean and start anew, so the group makes it their mission to save the world. It's a lot of what you heard before, and it plays pretty much how you expect, but what makes the plot is the wonderful cast of characters you have on the journey. Everyone has their own personality and quirks and love to get in the action. And the banter between all of them make an otherwise basic plot feel a bit more. And by the last third of the game, the plot really starts to hit home. And one particular part of the endgame really got me, and I think anyone who's beaten it knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now, as for the game itself, it's mostly a Metroidvania active time RPG, and I know that sounds like an odd combination, but stay with me. In the overworld, it's your standard stuff. You have to explore a large map that you use abilities to get back and forth and find secrets later on. You get stuff like a dash, wall jump, able to hang from walls, ceilings, slide, ground pound, stuff like that. And if you played any Metroidvania, you know what to expect. Though for a Metroidvania, there's only one real collectible, which are these ringles. Red gems, basically, which you can use to either increase your defense or another action phase in combat. And to activate combat, it's as simple as running into an enemy or attacking them. How battles work is you have you and 3 party members you can use at any time. All of them are dedicated to a separate face button. Everyone can perform a move by either using a neutral, up, or down attack at the cost of 1 point, or a super move with 1 attack point and any amount of super bar. Afterwards, the character will need to wait to recharge to perform an action again. Think of there being an active time bar that stops whenever you or the enemy perform an action. So the goal is trying to get the biggest combo possible by using all your teammates. The bigger the combo, the more super meter you will build up. And on the enemy's turn, you will need to guard by hitting that party member's button. Holding it drains the super gauge, but time it right and you can gain super meter back. Think Mario RPG style of guarding would be the best comparison. Now, as for the presentation, it's fantastic. If Lab Zero showed one thing from Skullgirls, it's their skill with hand-drawn HD sprites. And that for sure carries over into Indivisible. The presentation hits you as soon as you start the game with a wonderful opening, animated by Studio Trigger and Titmouse, and sets a great tone for the game, and it just gets better from there. Sprites are gorgeously animated, it looks incredibly fluid, backgrounds and environments just come to life, the sound effects are nice and crunchy, the soundtrack has this mystical vibe and catchiness to it, and it enhances moments so well. And the charm expected from Lab Zero is here and accounted for. Not only for all the little background details everywhere, but there's a certain uniqueness to a lot of the cast and goofiness that gives them a lot of charm. Like one of your party members is a ballerina with no arms whatsoever. It's never really brought up, but it just kinda works and I ended up using her for most of the game. And the script writing is on point, blending both humor and drama together perfect, and adding a lot to this massive cast. While I did enjoy a lot of them, some of my faves have to go to Dar, who hits like a truck for most of the game, and starts off as a total jerk, but gets hit with a big slice of humble pie and really starts to grow on you after a while. Torani, a water goddess, who acts like the mother of the group and is great for both healing and setting up magic. Zebe, who's kinda like the Han Solo of the group, and can deal constant damage with his bow and arrow. Ramsey, who can attack with fire and speed debuffs, and is into everything creepy and unusual, and in many ways is like the little devil on Ashna's shoulder. Nuna, who's just far too innocent for her own good, and has plants that can grow from the ground and interrupt enemies' turns, and that's just scratching the surface. Safe to say, you're gonna find characters who you like really quick in this cast. Not to mention the stellar voice acting throughout, and everyone is on the top of their game. There's quite a bit more voice acting than I expected. Like, almost every single line in the main story is voiced, which is great and impressive for an indie title. Presentation-wise, Indivisible just knocks it out of the park. And the gameplay is fun too. Moving around feels great, especially once you get the right tools. The auto checkpoints help keep the pace up and don't make you redo sections much, and the boss fights are easily one of the biggest highlights. They each have just the right amount of build-up, and what's cool is that they blend both RPG battles and Metroidvania movement into them, which is honestly really cool and makes the scale of the battles feel that much greater. Not to mention more content is coming down the line. Most importantly, guest characters from other indie titles like Hyper Light Drifter, Shovel Knight, and Shantae will be playable, and I can't wait to see how they look and play. Also on a side note, you can find the boss, and you can one-shot him with a dive kick. That's incredible! However, Indivisible does have some pretty big downsides. For one, there are cutscenes that can go on for way too long, some going well over 40 minutes with no save point in them, and I was having to skip through them and then watch them online because I had to start going by the end of them. So maybe some breaks in between that you can save, or maybe just a quick save feature would help. Backtracking can be a big issue because for a long portion of the game, there's no fast travel, meaning you'll have to run to each area manually, and that eats up a lot of time. You don't get any form of fast travel until the last third of the game, which honestly really doesn't matter at that point. But by far the worst is the mountain. You need to climb this place 3 separate times in the story with no fast travel at all. You need to keep going through the same sections just to get to the new part, and this drags the pace of the game to a crawl. You remember the Temple of the Ocean King in Phantom Hourglass? It's like that with all the trappings. These are the weakest part of the game, especially since there's no combat, it's just pure platforming going up for like an hour at a time, and it makes the game just drag. Also, how you get powers for Metroidvania exploration isn't handled that great. Most of the time when you get into a situation, you can't pass by it, so the characters talk about it, and then you'll either borrow a weapon, think of a new skill for a weapon you already had, or Ajna will just suddenly figure out how to do a skill on the fly. It doesn't feel rewarding to get them, or just frustrating when getting the power up just makes no sense. And searching for stuff in the overworld isn't really worth it. You can get some character abilities that unlock a character's full potential, but I didn't really notice that much of a change, and you really don't need them honestly. More on that in a bit. And the gems to power yourself up, it's the only real collectible, which makes discovering them not feel that exciting. Especially because while you can put them into attack and defense, I'm gonna say it now, don't even bother with defense. Why? Well, it leads to my biggest issue with the game overall. This game's challenge is a single toothpick. And by that I mean you just apply a little bit of pressure and you snap it completely in half. You have such ridiculous tools at your disposal. Super Meter is incredibly easy to build up, and you can just combo an enemy to the point where they don't even get a chance to attack. Let's put it like this, almost all of mid-game and even to endgame, you don't even need a healer since you heal after battle, and trust me, you're gonna do far more damage to them than they will to you. And they made the game so pretty much any team combination will have some kind of synergy, but because team members can just combo off each other so much, once you find your group, there's really no need to experiment with the others because the game really doesn't fight back. The most you get are these enemies with shields that you just need to do a high-low and then it's gone, big health bar enemies who for some characters that doesn't even phase them. The only ones I can think that give you trouble are enemies that absorb magic, or do damage when you do physical damage to them. But again, because of how powerful you can be, you can just war of attrition them with very little problem. And some characters in particular are just game breakers. Ginseng and Honey can both attack and heal for large amounts, making every turn your health bar never go down. Ajna can just flat out revive party members and heal everyone, not to mention her super laser just tears through everything. Nuna can just flat out Uno reverse card enemies' turns with her traps and just stop their turn. Not to mention almost everyone in the game can combo off of her for insane damage. And then Kappan. Kappan! She is without question the most busted character I found in the game. How come? Okay, her super meter lets her use any remaining bars you have left to bash an enemy down. Then any remaining turns she had, she uses in a wind-up blow. So she can do stuff like this in one turn. Yeah! She tore through almost every boss in the game in one turn once I got her. It was nuts. But just kind of highlights again, you are far too powerful for the world around you. Also, some things in the game are just not explained that well, like for example the hearts that are supposed to signify a character's level. It's really confusing because Dar starts off at a negative number, but it's not like he's weaker than everybody else. It's like supposed to be an affiliation thing, but there's nothing in the game that really explains this. And I can see some people definitely getting confused by what exactly this information means. So Indivisible is kind of a weird one to review just because of all the hats that this game is wearing. But I think as an RPG, I can recommend it for the great characters, fun story, gorgeous visuals and soundtrack, and all of the heart that the game really has. And for its really fun battle system. But just know if you're looking for a challenge, you're not gonna find it here, as it's just far too easy to snap in half, and currently there isn't any kind of difficulty modifiers you can apply to the game. However, as a Metroidvania, I don't think I can recommend it for that. The exploration is just a little too basic, getting around the map can be a pain, rewards aren't really worth it because of how easy the game naturally is, and platforming sections could have used some more refinement. But overall, I'd say Indivisible was a success for a weird hybrid of a game. It's got problems for sure, but the charm and heart that the game has really does pick up the slack. So congrats Lab Zero on a job well done. Just next time make it so I'm not comboing some poor snap in the corner every battle, okay? Okay.